Scouts of the Roman army were the unsung heroes of its armed forces who helped probe the darkness to detect threats and locate prey for the legions. Operating in the shadows of the past, they leave little trace in our historical records and receive even less attention in modern media. But today, it will be our goal to shine a spotlight on these ancient reconnaissance forces by bringing to life the Scouts of Rome.
This video was made possible thanks to the reenactment and filmmaking of our friends Veteres Milites. Recon missions into the unknown were challenging expeditions that could only be accomplished by healthy, well-provisioned scouts. I'm not sure that I would have survived. Even in everyday life, I know I've always struggled to find healthy sources of energy to get me through my day, let alone making it a habit that ensures my body gets the right vitamins and nutrients it needs. Thankfully, today's sponsor, AG1, has a solution. AG1 is a comprehensive daily nutrition drink made powerfully simple. It's made up of 75 high-quality, whole food-sourced ingredients, including vitamins, minerals, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens, carefully curated to nourish all the body's systems holistically. What's even better is they've made this solution super easy to use. Just mix 1 scoop or a travel pack into 8 ounces of water, shake it, and drink it for an effortless morning routine. The AG1 travel packs are great for when I'm on the go or even sharing with friends. While it's clear AG1 has worked hard to blend a great natural taste, I've definitely enjoyed rotating through splashes of my favorite fruit juices to mix things up between days of the week. You can also enjoy high-quality daily nutrition and long-term foundational gut health with AG1 by going to athleticgreens.com/invicta to get started on your order. AG1 is going to give my community a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Thanks to AG1 for sponsoring today's video. Enjoy!
The Roman legion did the fighting while the logistics train did the feeding. Each was a marvel of its time and, in theory, the two could work together to defeat almost any foe. But without eyes and ears to guide them, both would stumble ahead blindly, risking delay, dysfunction, and death. This was especially true in a world which lacked detailed maps and which was perpetually shrouded in a thick fog of war. Thus, it was imperative for a properly functioning Roman army to establish a robust system of military intelligence. But how was this achieved? In the years of the young Republic, Roman scouting was quite immature and ad hoc. Its flaws had led to a series of terrible defeats over the years. But by the late Republic, many lessons had been learned and new means and methods were implemented. This would all be increasingly standardized as the Roman army transitioned to a fully professional force. Standard doctrine of the early imperial era called for armies to deploy a reconnaissance network composed of 3 layers. The first involved the procursatores, who patrolled within a day's march of the main army. The procursatores were not some specialized elite scouting unit. Rather, they were merely a group of troops who had been selected from the main army to fill the role as the situation demanded. As a result, their composition varied greatly. Whilst deployed, the procursatores primarily acted as a close screen for the army, who would make contact with any nearby forces. These patrols were maintained day and night, with their frequency being increased in dangerous territory. As such, they could intercept deserters, informants, enemy scouts, and troops. In addition, the procursatores could help act as pathfinders for the next day's march and might assist in foraging operations. The next reconnaissance group involved the exploratores, who acted as an outer ring of scouts which operated several days' march beyond the main army. These exploratores would be expected to report back everything that they could, especially details of terrain in a certain direction, any signs of enemy activity, and they would be expected to plot out a site for the nightly marching camp of the legions. They would also be equipped to potentially skirmish against any enemy scouts that they could not avoid. As with the procursatores, the exploratores tended to be lightly equipped cavalry troopers, selected for an ad hoc assignment rather than on any permanent basis. Oftentimes, the soldiers would be chosen from among the auxiliaries who made up the bulk of Rome's cavalry forces. However, this was not always the case. In Trajan's Dacian Wars, legionaries themselves were picked for the job. By the later empire, however, it does seem that the exploratores were eventually organized into their own formalized units. Whatever the case, the men in question would have been screened for possessing the necessary skills and experience, given the importance of the task at hand. The final reconnaissance group involved the speculatores, who were more akin to spies that operated far beyond the army, often conducting missions within enemy territory. These agents appear to have been selected for service on the basis of their loyalty and discretion. They were likely recruited on an ad hoc basis with little in the way of standardization. After all, spies had been a feature of Roman warfare for quite a while, and groups of speculatores came in all sorts of shapes and sizes. It's only later on during the imperial era that we start to hear of the formalization of this institution. Supposedly, there were 10 undercover agents attached to each legion, with the individual spies reporting up through the regular chain of command. Together, these three groups were capable of providing excellent reconnaissance service for the Roman army. For now, let us take a closer look at the mid-range scouts. The size of such a force varied greatly depending on the needs of its commander. Minor campaigns and garrison posts might make do with a handful or few dozen of such men. However, on a major military excursion, their numbers could be significant. One excerpt from a surviving source claims that, in his Persian campaign, the Emperor Julianus employed about 1,500 scouts to guide his army. For our scenario, we shall return to our border commander, who has a rather limited supply of manpower. He has received some reports of unrest in the region and plans to march out with the armed units in a show of force. The area is reasonably well known to the commander, as the Romans have been in the region for some time. Perhaps a crude map with routes linking villages and landmarks has already been prepared. This will certainly be useful for planning his operations. Even so, the region has been known to harbour raiders and other locals who have historically been hostile to soldiers of the empire. Caution will be required. The legate, therefore, makes the prudent decision to send out men to scout the anticipated marching route. Specifically, he would like them to locate a suitable fording point for the river, which has seen recent flooding, to sniff out potential ambushes in the narrow mountain path, and to generally take notes on details relevant for the main body's advance, such as campsites, foraging opportunities, and fresh water supplies. For this mission, about a dozen men will do. The task force is assembled by consulting with the officers to pick out the best men for the job. These will be soldiers who have relevant experience in such matters. All of them would be skilled at recognizing trails, local flora, landmarks, and worrying signs of an enemy presence. Ideally, at least one of them will have grown up in these lands and is familiar with the environment and the people. Once the men have been assembled and briefed, they will begin to prepare for the journey ahead. Such missions will last several days, if not weeks, beyond the support of the main Roman force. Thus, they must be self-reliant and come prepared to meet the unexpected challenges ahead. A basic soldier's kit would include weapons, armor, sleeping gear, cooking supplies, and rations. Scouts might choose to travel light, removing, swapping, or augmenting parts of their kit. For instance, it would be important to carry additional dried foods meant to last a while and to include utility equipment such as a rope. For the rest of their needs, they would have to live off the land. Such scout units might be expected to carry out their mission on foot. Other times, they might bring a mule to lug around their gear or might have their own horses to ride upon. The exact disposition of a scout group would vary based on their available resources and the nature of the mission. Mounted scouts were excellent for speed, but could not necessarily traverse the same types of terrain or remain as discreet as their dismounted counterparts. A hybrid scout force was often the best approach, and we hear from our sources of how the two could work in tandem in the field. For this particular mission, though, we have assumed that a small foot-based force of scouts has been deployed. Their first objective will be to locate a point to ford the local river, which is about a day's march from camp. Fords were often locally known, being essential to any sort of travel or trade. Bridges might exist at these crossing points. But such infrastructure could be expensive, and unless an emperor or governor had a good reason to spend the money and time to build a bridge, an army would often just find a relatively shallow spot in the river where they could cross. This would have the unfortunate side effect of making the entire army quite vulnerable. Additionally, if there had been a heavy storm recently, a ford could be washed away or change position entirely. Our scouts will begin by approaching the previously known fording point. Here, they assess the conditions and perhaps seek out a few alternatives. Suitable candidates will be both easy to cross and free of natural or human opposition. When the best path is decided upon, they will perhaps take some notes and leave some hidden markings for future reference before making the crossing themselves. After navigating the river and drying their feet, the scouts push on towards their next objective, the mountain pass. The journey ahead will be a multi-day trek across a forested region, with pockets of open prairies, ravines, and hills. Along the way, the men will periodically make camp and collect supplies. As they do so, they will make note of useful sources of water, timber, and forage. It will also be important for them to keep an eye out for locations where a larger force might be able to strike camp. Typically, these would be on elevated stretches of flat land with access to supplies. As the scouts approach the mountain pass, the forests begin to clear. Now they gain a better understanding of their surroundings and can begin to assess their location based on local landmarks. Perhaps a crude map will be used to reorient themselves towards the objective. Once properly oriented, they set off again. However, the sloping terrain and beating sun now slow their advance, and more regular breaks will be needed. And yet they press on, with eyes and ears open for potential signs of danger. As the scouts arrive at the feet of the mountain range, the ascent over brush and rock proves difficult. For an army, this might be considered impassable terrain, but for a small group of light scouts, there are few areas that are truly out of reach. By climbing a nearby ridgeline, the scouts are able to assess their surroundings. From here, they gain a clear view of the mountain pass objective and can trace the most optimal routes the legions might take to reach it. This vantage point also allows them to scour the lowlands for signs of enemy activity. This might be anything from campfire smoke to dust clouds, bird flights, and more. but an enemy might not be so readily detected, and so the scouts may plan to spend a day or more looking for clues around the area. At first, not much seems amiss. Footprints along the path appear to have been left by a passing herdsman and his cattle, while an old campsite rutted by a small cart points to the passing of a merchant. Beyond this, the scouts find little evidence of suspicious activity. They therefore make a final sweep of the surroundings before heading back to camp. They retread much of the same path as before, refining their notes about the route. It is now that one of the troopers spots a fresh sign, a small column of smoke in the distance. The scouts decide to investigate, approaching the target with caution. As they draw near, the source of smoke becomes clear. A small pyre burns with the remains of a sacrificed animal. Someone has been seeking the favor of the gods, but for what purpose is unclear. An inspection of the nearby ground reveals the tracks of at least a dozen men, enough to cause trouble, and certainly more than this small unit can take on alone. Armed with this latest information, the scouts pull back. They now make haste back to camp. In this way would information from the field be collected. Such scouts with important information would be quickly referred to a high-ranking officer of the Legion, or even the legate in charge. They would be accompanied by a scribe, who would take down the report and perhaps even create an accompanying diagram. The contents of our mission, for instance, might be boiled down as follows. The river crossing by the rocks around the third bend is navigable. Recommend taking the northeastern trails, which are in good condition and have several suitable campsites. The mountain pass is clear of rock slides and any signs of ambushes. Potential signs of a raiding party of 12 men were discovered on the Ides, about 10 stades northwest of the Old Forest. But this is just speculation. One of the few clues we have of what an actual scout report may have looked like appears on a fragment from Vinderlander. The scrap, scrawled on a wooden tablet, states the following. The Britons were unprotected by armor. There are very many cavalry. The cavalry do not use swords, nor do the wretched Britons mount in order to throw javelins. But what the whole text said, or what its nature was, sadly remains a mystery. And so the work of Rome's ancient scouts remains hidden in the historical shadows. Nonetheless, we hope you've appreciated our attempt to bring it to life. A big thanks to the team at Veturis Militates for their awesome reenactment and camera work. For more previews of upcoming live history projects, check out our Patreon. A big thanks to the current patrons for helping to fund the channel and to the researchers, writers, and artists who made this episode possible. We couldn't have done it without this team and this community. If you liked this episode, be sure to like and subscribe for more content and check out these other related videos. See you in the next one.